Caddis Maximus here, this time with the GearWrench 14-piece 3/8 inch drive metric deep or metric mid-length or mid-well socket set. They do come in quite a long package. Picked these up off of eBay for I think $35. Really one of the best deals. I had mentioned that with the 1/4 inch set, and actually it was such a good deal. It was surprisingly enough only a few dollars difference between the 13-piece 1/4 inch and the 14-piece 3/8. The 14-piece 3/8 goes from 6mm through 19. This would be known as a long set. Long sets are when they don't have any skips. This has no skips from the 6 through 19. 6mm and at least a 3/8 drive tends to be about the smallest of the socket sizes. Short sets are just like all the normal sets that you might see at Harbor Freight or just any tool sets where the metric sizes, maybe there's 7, 8, 10 pieces. Sometimes they don't skip, but they only go through 10 through 19. Those would just be known as short sets, and it just kind of encompasses anything that is not quite a few sockets. It doesn't cover at least a whole base range. Of course, there's master sets, such as this Napa Carlisle 3/8 inch. This would go from 6mm through 24 and 19 sockets. This is what's known as a master set. It's pretty much every size of 3/8 socket from the 6mm all the way up through 24mm, which is about as large as you get in 3/8 drive. Anyway, these are the midwells. And a quick update, I should say that I like the way these are sized. These are exactly right in the middle of what would be considered a standard deep well socket and a standard short well socket. I complained a little bit about the 1/4 inch maybe being a little bit on the short side for a mid-length socket, but somebody did point out in the comments, I didn't want to recognize that the fact that the 1/4 inch size sockets have actually grown. We have a Napa Carlisle here, and then I actually have we have a Snap-on, I've got a Proto, and I've got a Bonnie here. And the Bonnie is actually quite, several decades old. And if I can get these to line up just a little bit, it's kind of hard to tell, but the 1/4 inch sockets have actually grown. These 3 professional grade ones are actually all the same length, and then this Carlisle has gotten a little bit longer. So somebody pointed that out, and so these 1/4 inch drive midwells really are more towards the middle of the range. It's just that 1/4 inch drive short well sockets have kind of grown over the years, and with a cheaper brand, so it kind of made these a little bit weird. After that precursor, so these are 1 3/4 inch long sockets. It tends to be about 2.5 inches for one of the more standard size deep well sockets, although once again with professional brands, and I do happen to have, these are all 12, or actually this is a 10mm, but we do have a bit of an older Snap-on. We have a Proto and a Carlisle, and we can see how these more professional grade tools tend to run a little bit on the shorter side for their deep well and 3/8, and also many times these professional manufacturers, there'll be variable sizes depending on the diameter of the socket in a particular set. So it kind of confuses things, but like that Napa set that this Carlisle is from, they're all the same length, and I tend to prefer it that way. So if we take the same 12mm, although these are all the same height, 1 3/4, we can see that I do appreciate this a bit more. Is right in the middle of a standard size 3/8 inch drive socket and a currently standard size, I should say Taiwanese standard size deep well socket. And that's really what I was after, is to have something that was just right in the middle, because this length right here, once again, is something that's difficult to achieve. You can't really do it with even the stubbiest of extensions, and you're stuck trying to use 1/4 inch when you really should be using 3/8 or maybe 1/2 inch, and it may be a little bit too big. And so that's the whole purpose. And a lot of people like these midwells because they work so well on so many situations that these are actually the first size socket that they grab, and then they go for a shorter or longer one if they don't work out. I should say quality control is pretty good on these. If we take a quick look here, we can see that they're all pretty even. One thing I complain about GearWrench is that the roll stamping just isn't quite as heavy as I'd like it. But I do appreciate that on the 3/8 socket, since they had enough space, they do stamp the size on twice. And so that does help with identification, although there's some brands such as Proto here, which puts the size just in, you could almost, feel the size. It is just so large and well roll stamped, and which other manufacturers kind of get that, just have a nice big, large, and easy to read label. It's not a big deal when you have sockets organized on strips, but many times sockets become disorganized, and it becomes much more critical to get the right size in there. So the only real complaints I could find, or real inconsistencies, is if we're going through here, some of these we can see aren't quite the same. What I've discovered is like on this 14 millimeter, and then we'll go ahead and go back to this 12. And you can see it on camera. You can see the little undercut that is for the ball detent. You can see that it ended up just being a little bit close to the end of the socket. So all that means is that when you put one of these on a ratchet here, this one sits, you know, nice and flush and deep, where this one just doesn't quite sit as deeply, not quite as flush. And so that would be, you know, it's a really small nitpick, but a lot of people kind of like the details, and that's really the only real issue I found with this set. And that's obviously a pretty minimal issue, considering that it was like $35 shipped for a 14-piece set of a name brand GearWrench. It's really surprising that it's almost like the clothing. What I mean by clothing brand of tools is some places really charge huge markups for these, but if you look around online, you can find GearWrench products for surprisingly competitive prices, and particularly for things like mid-length sockets, which are already kind of hard to find to begin with. Man, these actually are surprisingly well priced. It happens to be that the metric sets are cheaper than the fractional sets, even though they contain more sockets, because Apex Tool Group is just passing on the volume discount. They're selling a lot more metric sockets than they are fractional, and so people get better volume deals off of that, and why they're showing up for a little bit cheaper than the fractional counterparts. And that's why I've been getting the metric ones. I use a lot of metric, and but I will eventually get the fractional ones too. So even though they do have some of those issues with the undercut not being spaced quite right, if we do something here, say take this Napa Carlisle, and we wobble this socket around, it seems like a normal fit, like that. Even if we take, say, this Proto, the Proto actually has a bit tighter fit than that Carlisle does, but you would expect that. We do have a snap-on here, and the reason I'm comparing these fits is something I've just noticed. The snap-ons, this is one thing that is nice. The snap-on squares are super tight. Really nice, accurate broaching. You do get something when you buy a snap-on. On these GearWrenches, I was actually really surprised that they are also pretty tight. Not quite as tight as the snap-on, but better than the Napa Carlisle. And I really appreciate that. They just have a little bit tighter broaching, so the stock socket's just a little bit less wobble, and just provides a better action when you're using it. What I mean by that is when a socket doesn't wobble, the less the socket wobbles around on the anvil, then you're not kind of ending up in, it's retentive, easiest way of saying it, but you know, it's kind of like using breaker bars and T-handles. The more sturdy and rigid the whole driving setup is to the socket, it just seems easier to actually work with and loosen fasteners. Anyway, that was kind of the little video I had for this. I just wanted to point these out and wanted to mention that they, for versus the 1/4 inch, these really are exactly what I was wanting, which is just absolute mid-length sockets here. Let's do a little zoom in. And here we go. I actually have one of these little power built. These are the super stubby sockets, which are actually even short broach, so that to get them this short. But with the super stubby and normal, and now these GearWrench mid-length or mid-wells, and then the Carlisle deep wells, you really get 4 pretty distinctive lengths of sockets. And so pretty much allows you now to get into, or would allow me anyway, to get into just about any type of situation. And the reason that having sockets like this is because there's so many times when the right size socket allows you to clear something while being able to still easily be able to get the tool onto the fastener. And so many times if you just have just a little bit shorter or a little bit longer of a socket, it just can make the work a whole lot easier, rather than, you know, maybe the short well is too short, so you're stuck with a deep well, but because of the space constraints, you can only ratchet, say, 2 or 3 clicks with the deep well, because now you don't have any handle space, where of course a mid well would be exactly right. It would give you the clearance that you need to get at the fastener, but also the ratchet will be placed in a situation where you can get more clicks out of it, making the work a little bit faster. So that's really how these all these different link sockets really pay for themselves. So anyway, Sorry for having another long video about something so simple as a set of sockets, but I do like to talk about particularly hand tools on this channel. And so I'll throw caution to the wind, even if there's a few dislikes. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody who's been watching and subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. Until next time, Catus Maximus out.